Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This audio uses AI narration to present our original book analysis.
No, very cool.
Today, we are diving deep into the Consolation of Philosophy.
Okay.
You heard of this one?
Oh, yeah. It's a fascinating book.
It was written in the 6th century
Wow.
by a guy, well, I guess at the time he was a Roman senator, named Boethius.
I see.
And he wrote it while he was imprisoned.
Oh, wow.
So kind of a crazy story behind it.
Yeah, what landed him in prison?
Well, he was accused of treason and sorcery.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
In the 6th century.
And eventually executed.
Oh, wow.
But what's interesting is that the book, it's not just a straightforward philosophy book.
Okay.
It's this blend of prose and poetry, which makes it, I don't know, it's kind of unique.
I can see how that would make it very engaging.
Right. Like for the reader, I feel like it makes it both intellectually and emotionally engaging.
I can definitely see that.
So to kind of set the stage for our listener,
Yeah.
who is this guy, Boethius?
Well, he was a prominent figure in his time, a Roman senator, as you said, but also a scholar, a statesman,
Okay.
known for his eloquence, his deep understanding of Greek philosophy.
Really?
Yeah, a strong commitment to justice. But ironically, I guess, it was that commitment that ultimately led to his downfall.
Oh, wow.
The accusations against him, treason, sorcery, they stemmed from his political activities.
So he was kind of outspoken.
It sounds like it.
I mean, to write a book like The Consolation of Philosophy while facing those circumstances, I can't even imagine.
Right.
Can you?
It's pretty remarkable.
It is.
To find solace in philosophical reasoning while literally facing your own mortality, it says something about the power of ideas.
So let's get into the book itself.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's structured as a dialogue between Boethius and, well, a character called Lady Philosophy.
I see.
She appears to him as a vision in his prison cell,
Okay.
and she offers him guidance, well, through philosophical reasoning.
I see. Like an internal space he's creating for himself.
Right.
Amidst all the external turmoil.
Yeah. And the book opens with Boethius lamenting his fate, surrounded by the muses of poetry. But then Lady Philosophy arrives, and things take a very interesting turn.
How so?
Well, she's not too pleased with the muses.
Okay.
She sees them as encouraging Boethius to just wallow in his sorrow.
Interesting. So what does she do?
She basically challenges him to use reason and logic to confront his despair. It's almost like a battle for his soul, you know?
Like she's saying, hey, snap out of it.
Kind of, yeah. It really makes you think about how we deal with hardship. Do we just surrender to our emotions, or do we, I don't know, try to find meaning through reason?
That's a question we all grapple with, I think.
At some point, probably, yeah.
It's a human condition.
But so Boethius, I mean, he's kind of hesitant at first, right?
He is, yeah. He's been immersed in the world of politics and power, and suddenly he's confronted with these abstract philosophical concepts.
So it's like a whole new world.
Exactly. But Lady Philosophy, she's patient, persistent. She uses reason, but also poetic imagery to guide him.
Yeah, the poetry, that's what makes this book so unique.
I was just going to say that. So what are some of the big themes that they discuss?
Well, one of the central ones is the nature of fortune.
Yeah.
You know, like fate, luck, destiny, whatever you want to call it.
And how it impacts our lives.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Lady Philosophy, she argues that fortune is fickle, unpredictable.
Okay.
So you can't find true happiness in those external things like wealth or power.
Yeah, I see where she's going with that.
Instead, she emphasizes inner virtue and, the pursuit of wisdom as the path to true fulfillment.
It's a recurring theme in philosophy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But then it kind of raises the question, how do you reconcile the idea of a just God with a seeming randomness and sometimes cruelty of fortune?
Yes. That's a tough one.
It is. It's something I think a lot of people struggle with, like reconciling their beliefs with the realities of life, the ups and downs.
Absolutely. And Boethius, he initially struggles with this too. But then Lady Philosophy, she introduces this concept of providence.
Providence?
Yeah. It's like a divine plan that governs the universe, even if we don't always understand its workings.
Okay, so while fortune might seem random, it's actually part of a larger order.
Exactly. It's a shift in perspective, from focusing on the immediate events to seeing them as part of this grander scheme.
That reminds me of something we were talking about before, the Stoic idea of focusing on what you can control.
Yes. Your own responses, your choices.
And letting go of what you can't.
It's very similar.
So within this divine scheme, even adversity has a purpose.
That's what Lady Philosophy argues, yes. She says suffering can be a test of character, an opportunity for growth, a way of refining our virtue. She even suggests that what appears to be bad fortune can sometimes actually be a blessing in disguise.
That's a really interesting concept, that challenges and setbacks can actually lead to growth and resilience.
It's a powerful idea. But it's not about passively accepting suffering. She emphasizes the importance of using reason and free will to navigate those challenges.
So we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can choose how we respond.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance between acceptance and action. And for Boethius, that struggle is very real. He's wrestling with these ideas, especially given that he's unjustly imprisoned.
Yeah, it's like his whole world has been turned upside down.
Exactly. So how does he grapple with the idea of free will, especially given her emphasis on a preordained plan?
That's where it gets even more interesting.
Wait, I was about to say, lay it on me.
In Book V, Lady Philosophy really dives into the whole relationship between divine foreknowledge and human freedom.
That's a big one.
It is, and it's a question that's been around for centuries. It's still relevant today. How do those two concepts coexist? Divine knowledge of the future, but also our ability to make choices.
Right.
So what does she say?
Well, she argues that God's knowledge isn't limited by time. He sees all of time, past, present, future, everything simultaneously.
So it's like a different perspective.
Exactly.
But his knowing what we're going to do doesn't mean that we don't freely choose our actions.
That's what she says. It's not about predetermination, but rather about God's perfect knowledge of all possibilities.
So it's not like a script that's already been written.
Right.
It's more like God knows all the possible endings, but we're still the ones writing the story.
That's a helpful way to think about it.
And that understanding, I think, helps Boethius come to terms with this idea of a preordained plan, but also with the apparent randomness of fortune.
Right. It's all part of this larger order, even if we don't always understand it.
Exactly.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. And there's so much more to unpack in the Consolation of Philosophy.
I'm ready for more. So, picking up where we left off, I think it's really interesting how Boethius, or I guess Lady Philosophy, through Boethius, tackles the idea of evil.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is, right? It's something that philosophers, theologians, have been wrestling with for ages.
It does feel kind of paradoxical. It does.
If God is all good and all powerful,
right,
how can evil exist?
Right, exactly.
We see bad stuff happening all around us.
All the time. Yeah.
But if good is the source of everything, where does that evil come from?
Right. Yeah, it's tough to reconcile those two things.
It is.
So Lady Philosophy, she offers a really, I think, a surprising perspective.
Mm-hmm.
She argues that evil in its true essence doesn't actually exist.
Wait, what?
I know, right? It sounds kind of counterintuitive.
How can you say that? I mean, there's so much suffering and injustice.
I know, but hear me out.
Okay.
She's saying that what we perceive as evil is actually the absence of good, a privation.
A privation.
Yeah, like a lack of something, like a shadow.
Okay.
Where there should be light.
So instead of focusing on evil as this powerful force,
yeah,
we should be focusing on cultivating goodness.
Exactly. And if God is the source of all goodness, then he can't create evil.
So evil isn't an entity.
That's what she's arguing.
It's more like a consequence of turning away from good.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
That makes you think about accountability in a whole new way.
It does, doesn't it? So then what does that say about punishment? If evil is a choice to turn away from goodness,
yeah, good point.
Then are we really responsible for the evil we see in the world?
It's complicated.
It is. And this leads to another point that Lady Philosophy makes about punishment. She argues that true punishment for wrongdoing isn't something that's, imposed externally by God or any authority.
It's not about like divine retribution.
Not in the conventional sense, no.
Or like hellfire and brimstone.
No, she's saying the true punishment for evil is in the act itself.
What do you mean?
By choosing evil, we separate ourselves from goodness, which is the source of true happiness.
I see. So the punishment is the consequence.
Yeah, the natural consequence.
Of the choice.
Right.
So it's self-inflicted.
It is. And it's that internal turmoil, that separation from our true nature and the inability to experience real happiness that comes from being connected to the good.
That's kind of a sobering thought, isn't it?
It is.
It suggests that our choices have a profound impact, not just on the world, but on ourselves.
Absolutely.
On our inner state.
Exactly.
And that kind of connects back to what Lady Philosophy was saying earlier about happiness.
Right. It's not about external things. It's about that inner alignment.
And that reminds me of something else that makes this book so unique,
What's that?
Boethius doesn't just present these arguments in prose.
Oh, right.
He weaves in these really beautiful, really moving poems throughout the text.
I was just thinking about that. They add a whole other dimension to the book.
Don't they? It's like we're getting this glimpse into his emotional journey, you know?
Yeah, it's not just intellectual, it's very personal.
It is.
And the poems also reinforce those philosophical points in a more, I don't know, evocative way.
Yeah, like a different way of understanding.
Right.
It's like sometimes a song lyric will stay with you long after you've forgotten the specifics of a conversation.
Totally. It's like that.
Those poems act as these little anchors for the ideas.
I love that, little anchors, yeah.
And the rhythm of poetry makes it more engaging to read.
Yeah, definitely. It breaks things up.
Keeps you on your toes.
Attack.
Keeps it interesting.
Right.
Like in Book 4 when he describes the soul's ascent to heaven.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful one.
It's beautiful.
It is.
The imagery he uses.
It really captures this idea of the vastness of the universe and the soul's potential for transcendence.
So he's weaving together this personal reflection, philosophical arguments, poetic expression.
All into this one cohesive work.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable.
What do you think, out of all this, what strikes you the most?
I think it's how he finds a way to actually feel consoled, even though he's facing these really, really difficult circumstances.
It's not about denying the suffering,
Oh,
but about confronting it
right.
and finding meaning
Exactly.
through reason and virtue.
And the belief in this larger divine plan.
What insights from the text have really resonated with you?
That's a good question.
I know it's hard. There's so much in there.
There is.
It's a dense book.
It is. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that true happiness doesn't come from those external things, Like, it's not about money or power.
Lady Philosophy hammers that home.
She does. It's about that inner state.
That alignment with virtue and wisdom.
Yes. And I think that's so relevant for today,
Absolutely.
We're constantly bombarded with these messages that happiness is all about stuff, material possessions, achievement.
Yeah, like buy this and you'll be happy.
Exactly. But Boethius and Lady Philosophy are saying, no, it's about cultivating that inner peace.
It's about finding fulfillment from within.
Yeah. And the other thing that really speaks to me is that adversity, as painful as it is, it can actually be an opportunity for growth.
Right, for transformation.
Yeah, those difficult times, they can refine our character.
It can make us stronger.
Exactly. They can deepen our understanding.
Lady Philosophy even goes so far as to say that what we might initially perceive as bad luck, as misfortune, it could actually be leading us towards something better.
Yeah, like a blessing in disguise.
It's a pretty radical idea.
It is, isn't it?
But it's hopeful.
It is. It is.
It's like we can find meaning even in our struggles.
Right. And while she emphasizes acceptance, she also talks about the importance of using our reason and free will to deal with those challenges.
So it's not about being passive.
No, not at all.
It's about accepting what we can't change.
Right.
But then choosing how we respond to those things.
Exactly.
We have agency even when things are tough.
We do. We're not just victims of circumstance.
We're active participants in our own lives.
I love that. That's so empowering.
The Consolation of Philosophy, it really does feel like a guidebook.
It does.
For how to live a meaningful life.
Even with all the challenges.
Yeah, and what's remarkable is that Boethius was writing from experience.
He was living it.
Yeah, this wasn't just theoretical for him.
He was facing his own death.
And yet, he found solace in these ideas.
It's incredibly powerful.
It speaks to the power of philosophy.
To provide comfort and guidance during the toughest of times.
He didn't turn away from the hard questions.
He leaned into them.
He wrestled with those big ideas, even as he was facing his own mortality.
It's inspiring.
And it's so relevant, I think, for all of us today.
I think so, too.
Any other thoughts you want to share before we move on?
I think one more that's really sticking with me is Boethius's emphasis on the interconnectedness of everything.
Ah, yes, that's a theme throughout the book, right? The idea that there's this divine plan.
Yeah, like a web that connects everything.
Every being, every event.
Right, and that has implications for our own lives.
Yeah, our actions have a ripple effect.
Exactly, even the small things.
It makes you think twice.
It does.
It's about how you live.
Absolutely, and I think there's a sense of humility that comes with recognizing that,
Like, we don't have all the answers.
We're all part of something much bigger than ourselves. And it encourages us to be curious, to stay open to new ideas, new perspectives.
Especially in a world that can feel pretty divided.
Yeah, for sure.
It's easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles.
It is.
Thinking back to everything we've talked about, it really strikes me how Boethius finds consolation. It doesn't come from denying the suffering, but from facing it head on.
That's the key, isn't it? He doesn't shy away from it.
No, he leans into it with reason, with virtue, with that belief in this larger divine order.
That's the heart of the Consolation of Philosophy right there.
It really is.
He's showing us that true consolation isn't about escaping life's difficulties.
It's about finding the strength to navigate them.
To find the wisdom to deal with those challenges.
It's a message that resonates, I think, across time.
It does.
Because it speaks to something universal in the human experience.
We all face suffering. We all search for meaning.
And this book offers a guide for that journey. So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive here, what would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Let's see. I think one of the biggest ones, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, is the power of philosophy.
To offer solace and guidance.
Exactly. Even in those dark moments.
Even when things are really tough.
Yeah. And Boethius, facing his own mortality,
Yeah.
he didn't turn to blind faith, you know?
It wasn't about dogma.
No, it was about reason, about inquiry.
It's like he's showing us that philosophy isn't just this abstract thing.
Right. It's not just for academics.
It's a tool for living.
It's a way to find meaning in the midst of chaos.
I like that. A tool for living.
And then hand in hand with that, I think the importance of inner virtue and wisdom.
That's the foundation for true happiness.
Exactly. Lady Philosophy makes that very clear.
External things are fleeting.
They are. They come and go.
But that inner strength, that's what endures.
It's about aligning yourself with, like, the divine will.
Yes. Living in accordance with reason, with virtue. Seeking that connection with something bigger than ourselves.
That's where the real fulfillment lies.
It's like finding your inner compass.
I love that, your inner compass.
To guide you through all the ups and downs.
That's beautiful.
And then lastly, I think that point about interconnectedness, remembering that we're all part of something larger.
Yes.
We're all connected.
There's this grand divine order.
It's humbling, isn't it?
It is.
When you think about
It
it.
makes you realize that your actions matter.
They do. Every choice we make has an impact.
It's inspiring in a way.
It is.
It's like even in the face of adversity, we have the power to choose good.
To make a difference.
To live a life that contributes to the greater good.
That's what it's all about.
It's a powerful message.
It is. And if you're ready to explore these ideas further, I highly recommend checking out The Consolation of Philosophy.
It's a book that has stood the test of time.
It has.
It offers this timeless wisdom for navigating the complexities of life. And for more deep dives into thought-provoking works like this, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
We've got lots more insights to share to help you nourish your mind on the go.
And you can find a link to purchase The Consolation of Philosophy in the show notes.
Happy reading, everyone.